So this is scripting attacks, cross-site scripting and server-side scripting. We are the CyberEagles, and we sort to defend. I'm Brandon Serrato.
I'm Jeff.
Connor Payne. Connor Wilson.
April Bradley.
And Christopher Haggerty.
So for introduction, with given this assignment and project, our team first, with learning about cross-site scripting and other scripting attacks in class, we wanted to broaden our knowledge of the subject before we actually implemented and went through with our attack. We started off by doing a lot of outside research so we could be a little bit more comfortable with what we did. And once we became a little bit more comfortable as a group, we prepped for our attack using the Linux virtual machine that Dr. provided and her thorough instructions. We began to attack our test site that was provided. And then after running through the attack multiple times, we began to see why this type of attack was so common and all that was gained from using this attack method. And in our following slides, we go into a little bit more depth on background knowledge on the subject, literature reviews for cross-site scripting and Apache 2, our method and network topology, the live demonstration, the results we got from it, and our recommendations for mitigating the risk of server-side and cross-site scripting.
A little bit of background knowledge of what we were working with. We're using Apache 2, one of the most widely used web server softwares out there. It's an open source, very common that everyone uses it. And with Apache, it is modeled on Unix, which is we are accessing through a virtual machine connection. And with a virtual machine, we are using a set of specification and configuration files that are backed by the physical resources of the host. And when we use Apache 2, if it's not configured properly, we won't be able to access the sites that we need to access when we are using our test site or in rest sites on our project throughout this presentation.
Alright, so for the literature review on Apache, I found a nice bar graph that gives you all of the vulnerabilities of the Microsoft web server along with Apache and comparing the two. And so with our hack, it was configuration error. And as you can see, the configuration errors for Apache are much higher than the Microsoft server, and that's due to the complicated process of setting up the actual Apache server. The main cause of this is developers are typically much more focused on the business aspects and then on the security. So for the literature review of the cross-scripting, I found that web application attacks are much more commonly used on applications that include user input, and they're also categorized into two: reflected attacks and stored attacks. And reflected attacks are typically with emails and links, and stored attacks are stored on the actual servers themselves. And they also have a nice diagram that gives you an example of a stored attack. This is a hacker injects the malicious the script, steals the cookie, and then it's on the user's computer.
Which Connor are you?
Payne.
I'm Connor Wilson. This is a very basic network diagram for how we went about our methods. We've got two VMs, the Windows VM and the Linux machine, both of them accessible by the remote app at FSU. We can connect on our personal machines. They're connected to two networks, one internal VM network that lets them interconnect and one that lets it out to the internet. Our Linux machine has no GUI, so we use our Windows machine to access our actual web pages. And we'll do a hands-on demonstration here. So here we are in our XSS folder with setGetCookie.htm. We will input our username, Eagle. Set the cookie, show the cookie, verify that it's there. Submit the username, hello Eagle. We'll forward on over to malurl.htm. Now here are our second link. While it shows that it's a very safe link, it's not. It will end up redirecting us to this stealcookie.php, which has our username in it, and it will use that against us. And, no less, on our Linux machines, it has it stored, as you can see by all of the various usernames we've had so far. So onto our script attacks folder. As you've probably seen, we'll go roses.htm, and it shows us a page about roses. But now, if we add bash commands, you can now see that there's more files. Continue a little forward, we'll go into the confidential folder, and it shows us bankinfo.htm. And then finally, you can use cat, you can use more, but you will be cat into the confidential folder and the specific bankinfo.htm file. And sure enough, $100,000, now somebody knows you have it.
The results of the attack were successful. We were able to complete the attack that we wanted to complete. Some of the things that could help defend against this type of attack would be Google Chrome uses sandboxing, and Firefox uses a plugin called NoScript. For Google Chrome, the multi-process architecture allows for a lot of flexibility the way in the browser handles security. The entire HTML rendering and JavaScript execution is isolated to its own class of processes. The sandbox uses security features of Windows extensively. That way it doesn't recreate the wheel. It uses access identity tokens tied to the processes, similar to a role-based architecture, role-based RBAC architecture. And this can help eliminate the search bar technique that was utilized in the early part of the video. Can help not allow those type of cross-site scripting attacks.
And like Chris said, the biggest part about fixing this, like the quick fixes, is to get rid of that search bar technique and just have to drop down. However, another idea we found was HTTP only flags, which keeps those type of script attacks server side, so they don't capture any cookies like we saw with CyberEagle being captured. It keeps on the server side so that it doesn't capture any of the client cookies and keeps the client safe, which is actually a very big problem for a lot of the hacks that are going on today with like Equifax.
Now, all those recommendations and such are a little bit more complex, and some people might not understand the grasp of like implementing that. But some of the simplest things that we could recommend for anybody, webmaster or whoever is owning or working on your site, is understanding that cross-site scripting, we know and understand that it is affected by a user's input onto your site. So setting up like a detection system that will look for like malicious like script tags and HTML commands, JavaScript commands, stuff like that is been shown to be the easiest and most effective way to like stop cross-site scripting attacks. And also, like April had mentioned, some of the most simple and easiest like security 101 is just updating software and updating your web server or Apache server or whatever your website really relies on to function is one of the most simple and easiest ways to like help protect against any server vulnerability or cross-site scripting attack.